And now, Laurie Guerrero, the Poet Laureate of the city of San Antonio, recently also appointed Poet Laureate of the state of Texas for 2016. She is the author of 3 poetry collections, Babies Under the Skin, A Tongue in the Mouth of the Dying, and A Crown for Gumecindo. Guerrero is a recipient of the American Academy of Poets Prize from Smith College, the Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Award, the Andres Montoya Poetry Prize, and an International Latino Book Award. The writer-in-residence and literary arts director at the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center here, director of the Macondo Writers Workshop, founded by Sandra Cisneros. Laurie Guerrero, the meat people are getting out of control over here. She holds a BA in English, that's a nice nickname, from Smith College, an MFA in poetry from Drew University. Please give it up for Laurie Ann Guerrero.
I'm really nervous and I gotta pee, but I'm just gonna jump in, y'all. I'm just gonna jump in. Push the space bar, right? A few months ago, I was commissioned to write a poem about my city and art and culture. It's always an honor to be asked to speak on behalf of my city as Poet Laureate, but I couldn't help but think that it was an opportunity to recognize how very hard my ancestors worked so that I could have the privilege of being in such a position, that is, being asked to make art. That I, both non-white and woman, and in the name of my ancestors, could claim a history of labor as such, art. Or that I might be recognized as an artist and not, because of the long line of struggle we've endured, to be considered the art piece itself. I come from generations upon generations of artists, poets who were illiterate, painters who never touched a canvas, engineers who never set foot inside a classroom, musicians who sang for the sake of the spirit and not the dollar. Whatever the medium, it is how we map the world and how, if only briefly, we transcend it. And though sometimes we don't even know it, it's how we invite you to share that space of openness and vulnerability, and maybe, if we are so lucky, even grace. Let's take off our armor. Join me in this space. We make art because we seek truth. Sometimes we discover our truths, like our potential to hate, are devastating. But sometimes we discover our truths, like our potential to love, are revolutionary. We make art because we carry our history on our backs. For some of us, all of our mothers were made small in private spaces. And for some of us, all of our fathers were made small in public spaces. That's my grandfather there in the middle. Poet Audre Lorde says, "Your silence will not protect you." I love that slide. So I tend to put a lot of pressure on myself when I'm given a platform such as this. I know who I am, and I know what I represent and to whom. I am choosing to share this particular poem with you because, sadly, it is not the struggle of being a brown female mother artist, but recognition of that struggle via art that allows me to be in this arena with you tonight. These are the scariest places to be, but it's where change happens. And I have no doubt the artists that have graced your home, your community, this city, the recognized and maybe especially the unrecognized, have guided you as they have guided me. Everyone is born a poet, says poet William Stafford. This poem was inspired by San Antonio artists. Those are San Antonio poets right there, who speak urgently and deliberately, who carry inside them something precious, not a technique you can learn in school, nor a practice that can be perfected. Dancers, painters, musicians, filmmakers, playwrights, photographers, writers who live in liminal spaces gather their strength from their history, personal history, social history. I decided I'd write not for those who make the art, but for those who perhaps don't understand what it takes to make the art, who maybe don't understand how much the art is worth, as it has cost the lives of generations. So this poem is an ode to every hardworking artist in my city who knows the joy of struggle from which their art comes, who choose to speak in their various forms in honor of those upon whose shoulders we stand. This poem is called Ars Poetica, How to Make Art. You must start small, as our mothers were small, our fathers too small. In a pillowcase whip-stitched with roses or in an old coffee can, collect your abuelo's teeth. Assure them you will not bury them near the bones of the dog that froze the winter that dogs froze. Carry the teeth under your tongue. Let them root there. This is how you will learn to speak. Be ready to cough up songs, corridos plucked first by a revolutionary whose gun smoke you wear in your hair. The songs will be new in your throat. We are always beginning. We are always beginning again. You cannot be afraid to unhinge the jaw. Let the sun blister your mouth. No thirst. Cast your own eyes from their sockets like a confettied April, that you will know the bloom and the battle of flowers. Let your ribs draw across the ribs of another, el canto de violín. Let your fingers dance, el guitarrón. Needle or pen, brushed oil, machete or drum, leather, cilantro, stomp. Be patient in the tooling. The weaving of experience, 100, 500, 10,000 years to hear. Love making in the cotton and nopal. Battle lines and color lines. Birthing in the huts, in the casitas, under a grove of mesquite and huizache. And 2, lynchings and genocide in the feathery strands of our DNA that move our hands to do the work. Trust that your hands will know the work, even if you do not know the work. You do not speak for the dead. The dead speak for you. Thank you.
Oh no, not so fast, Poet Laureate. I just had a quick question. How did you grow up getting into poetry, and how did you become Poet Laureate?
Well, I come from a family of storytellers, and so my grandfather, whose picture I pointed to, was a storyteller in my family, for whom my last book was written, Gumesindo. So I grew up hearing stories, and when I discovered poetry, about 13, 14 years old, I discovered his storytelling style, his cadence, his ability to, turn a phrase. And where my grandfather was illiterate, he had a 3rd grade education, he picked cotton. Here I was given access to the tools to
And where did you grow up?
Southside.
Ah! I recognize the cadence of the South Side. And the goat lady, and the bus where the children died on the rails. Have you ever done, you remember this? Have you ever gone there? Okay.
Yeah, I live right there. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Now, have you ever done things like poetry slam, that kind of thing?
I am a big fan of slam poets. I think what they do is incredible. I don't have that kind of fearlessness that they do. They memorize their stuff and they get up there and they perform, and I just read.
And now, what's the difference between what do you do as San Antonio's Poet Laureate compared to Texas? Now, what do you expect? Like Greg Abbott says here, write me a poem. That'd be fun, wouldn't it?
Right.
All right. Hey. I could have said Ted Cruz.
As a city poet laureate, I'm an advocate for literature and literacy around the city. I'm doing 4 projects. One of them is a poetry archive of all the poets that have come and gone through San Antonio. That's going to be housed in the south side of Palo Alto College, which I'm really proud of.
Cool.
And as state poet laureate, I don't really have to do anything. It's just kind of a crown I get to wear, so I'm really excited about that.
Will you write some things about Texas?
I always write about Texas. Everything I write is about Texas.
I knew that. That's cool. And now, did you journal since you were a kid? If other people are out there, they want to get into poetry, they have a secret?
Yeah, I've been writing since I wrote my first poem when I was 8 years old. Actually, I thought it was a song because I wanted to be a rock star. I didn't know how to play any instruments.
And you were nervous getting up here?
Yeah, well, it wasn't a song, it was a poem. I'm a poet.
That's
so
cool. And your next, where can people see some of your work?
I have. I just had my latest book just came out in May. So right now I'm actually working on a book of fiction. So it'll be a while before that one's done. But.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Laurie and Guerrero, Poet Laureate.